UFC 265 Lewis versus Gane. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video by yours truly here at Boxingmmapicks. He goes by the name of Zan, the return of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. And here at Boxingmmapicks, we are giving you our fight-by-fight breakdown, fight-by-fight analysis, specifically from the betting perspective. Here to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights you want to avoid, which underdog has a shot at winning. And if you stick around until the end of the video, you may even get a little bit of parlay action as well. Pretty solid pay-per-view event here for UFC 265. Derrick Lewis taking on Ciryl Gane for the interim heavyweight title. We have 13 fights on this fight card. Pretty solid card overall. 8 fights on our prelims as currently scheduled. So we definitely have some work to do with our prelims. So let's get started with fight number 1. We have Johnny Munoz taking on Jamey Simmons. I'm going to start with this analysis. When I'm looking at this fight, first of all, important to note, both of these guys are coming off of losses in their respective UFC debuts. Simmons, he is moving down in weight. This is a bantamweight fight. He was fighting at 145. He even had a few fights at 155. His strong suit is wrestling. Jamey Simmons, he was a state champion, so he's definitely going to look to use that wrestling advantage that he has, or that advantage that he typically has over his opponents, I should say. But his style of stand-up, a bit more about feints, a bit more about level changes. It is serviceable, though, and you do have to somewhat respect it. Out of the 7 wins, 4 of those wins are via punches. So you definitely have to at least respect the stand-up, even though it may not be technically the best. If I'm looking at Johnny Munoz, on the other hand, I do think he will have the striking advantage. I look at him as the more diverse striker. I look at him as having pretty solid kicks, pretty solid stand-up overall. If I'm speaking to his ground game, he has a BJJ black belt. He'll use a takedown and clinch style of approach in the ring. Pretty good on top, looking to improve position, looking to stay on top of his opponent. He'll use that head and arm choke threat, again, to keep his opponents down, to stay on top, to continue to score points. And he has the ground and pound. We saw that in his fight versus Nate Maness, at least in the first round. And we look at his record, 10 wins, 6 of them are by submission. So definitely have to respect the diversity that he has to his game. Pretty solid stand-up, pretty solid ground game as well. When I'm looking at these two fighters, I think Simmons' size will play a factor in this fight, especially that Munoz, I kind of find that he fights off of the back foot at times. So Simmons being the bigger fighter, I should say, even though he's going to be the shorter fighter, for him to be the bigger fighter, that could be something that we could see happen in this fight, his size. But despite Simmons being potentially the bigger fighter, because we don't even know if that'll be the case, I do think that Munoz ultimately is the more talented fighter of the two. So I think Munoz is going to be my pick. Again, more diversity to his game. I like his grappling. He's going to be my pick. I think he has stand-up advantage as well. I'm going with Johnny Munoz.
Yeah, I like this fight. They opened up the card with Johnny Munoz. His previous fight, I think he won that fight versus Nate Maness. I believe he lost the point as well in that fight, but I still think he did enough to get the win. But yeah, he didn't get the decision. The judges weren't on his side. Simmons, I think this is going to be a grappling fight. I think they're both going to want to grapple, and I'm going to go with the better grappler. So I'm going to roll with Johnny Munoz. Yeah, he should be able to dictate the grappling here, and I think a lot of the fights can be there. So Johnny's my pick.
Sounds good to me. So let's move on to fight number 2. In that case, we have Victoria Leonardo taking on Melissa Gatto. Taking a look at this fight, starting with Victoria Leonardo, she lost to Menifield. That was back in January in her UFC debut. Can't be too mad at that. Menifield is a pretty solid fighter in this flyweight division. Leonardo, decent takedowns. She's pretty strong on top. She can definitely keep you down. Pretty basic in the stand-up, though. I don't like her stand-up at all. She kind of looks like, Ronda Rousey on the feet, respectively. Kind of has that older style that doesn't really have too much technique on the feet. So that's really what I'm seeing from Victoria Leonardo. Really just the ground game, or really just the wrestling, I should say, coming from her. Melissa Gatto, on the other hand, she's making her UFC debut. She hasn't really fought since September 2018. She actually beat Carol Rosa in a Brazilian promotion, of course, a number of years ago. I do wonder if she has some kind of lingering injury. I know she had some canceled fights in 2019 with the UFC and 2020 with the UFC. And in each of those fights, she did withdraw due to injury. So I wonder if there's something lingering there, but we're quite a bit of time from that time. So hopefully she's fully healed up. She's a grappler though. 4 of her 6 wins are via submission. Definitely speaks to her ground game in general. If you watch that fight versus Karol Rosa, she showed good jiu-jitsu defensively. Rosa landed the takedown and Gatto was able to turn that into a submission. And she's shown me a style where she wants to bring it to the ground right away. She's going to look to lock onto your body, look to take you down, look to make it a grappling match. Pretty good top game. I already talked about her defensive grappling as well. Interesting sort of wrestler versus grappler matchup in some ways for this one. But I'll keep it short. Ultimately, I think the grappler in Melissa Gatto, I think she has the better skill set, even though Victoria Leonardo probably has the better level of competition between these two. I do think that Melissa Gatto is just the better fighter. Can't really trust either of these women to fully make a pick on it. It is a relatively low level event. We don't know what Melissa Gatto is going to look like at this level. But again, I think she has a little bit more to offer. So she's going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is a good fight. I know Melissa Gatto, she's supposed to have a couple fights before on the UFC that were canceled. Yeah, I'm not sure for what reason, what injury she had. But yeah, what I've seen from her is really high level grappling, high level jiu-jitsu. That Carol Rosa win, that's a good win on her record. But her last fight, like you said, was back in 2018. Leonardo, what I see from her is kind of like a bully. She wants to get you against the cage, drag you to the ground. Not the best wrestler, but it is effective against a lot of these female fighters. I'm not sure it's going to be effective here. I think that from what I've seen, Gatto is very composed in the grappling situations. And I also think she's the more composed striker. So I think Melissa Gatto should get this done here. But my only concern is she likes to play off her back. Hope she doesn't stay there long enough because the judges reward that to the person on top, right? So I hope she just either gets a submission or gets back to her feet or gets top position, right? I don't want her to lay on her back the whole fight. But I still think she should get this done here in a fight that should be mostly grappling. So yeah, Melissa Gatto's my pick as well.
Agreed. Fight number 3. In that case, we have Miles Johns taking on Anderson dos Santos. I'll talk about this one as well. Looking at dos Santos first, he beat Martin Day back in November 2020 after starting 0-2 in the UFC. He's introduced as a Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu fighter. So again, always interesting to see how they're introduced in the ring. He has that sort of pressure style to him. Look for him to be coming forward. He can definitely hit hard. He puts a lot into his punches. Really likes to engage, big power in the hook combinations, I should say. Uses that calf kick with, some familiarity, so let's call it, I guess, more for rhythm rather than power, like just kind of point fighting, if that makes sense. He'll use the calf kick for that reason. Pretty good takedowns, I would say. Good clinch, pretty active clinch as well. He's strong too, physically. Good on top, good positioning. He can definitely win a round with some top control. Got to respect his submission ability as well. Locked in the guillotine on Martin Day if you go back to that last fight. And 12 of his 21 wins are via submission. So that's definitely going to be a threat of his pretty much at all times. If I'm looking at Miles Johns, on the other hand, he beat Kevin Natividad. That was back in October 2020. That was after suffering his first loss in his fight before that. So you see his record there standing at 11-1. Pretty decent on the feet, good jab, good lead hand in general, has that pop, throws a lot into his punches, decent movement. I think he fights from range. He fights from the outside. Don't necessarily look him to fight from the inside. So use that movement to his advantage. But his stand-up is primarily hands. He'll throw the occasional kick here and there. But from what I'm seeing from him, I do see that it is mostly hands. Good wrestling, though. He can definitely take his opponents down. In his last fight, wasn't able to really keep Natividad down at all. And a few of those takedowns that he got, it didn't count on the stat sheet, so don't necessarily let that number alarm you, 1.21 takedowns per fight at 30%. They didn't really count on the stat sheet because it just didn't really do enough with it. But again, he has that ability to take you down. So you have to respect his wrestling. Now, this is an interesting fight because I actually like the underdog in Anderson dos Santos here. I think he offers a little bit more compared to Miles Johns. I think dos Santos is probably the better grappler. And I think although Miles Johns can definitely hit hard, I don't necessarily think the stand-up is clearly in his advantage, even though he should be better on the feet. So again, I sort of like what the underdog has to offer. I think at least you're looking at a 50-50 type of fight. And for Miles Johns to be minus 210, I think that's a little too steep. So I'm liking the underdog here, plus 175. Anderson dos Santos is going to be my pick.
Okay. Yeah, this is a good fight. This is I think this is rescheduled from before because I remember studying this fight before. And my pick's gonna be the same. Like I really like Miles Johns in this spot here. I think what it comes down to is Miles Johns is the more athletic fighter, the stronger guy, the guy that will have the wrestling advantage to dictate where the fight goes. And his stand-up is ever improving, as you saw in that Nat fight. Nat Vidad's a striker, and Johns was able to piece them up on the feet. So that's promising to me that his stand-up is definitely going to be a more improved version of this fight because he's definitely working on that. I think Anderson dos Santos needs a submission here to get this done. I don't think he's going to be winning the fight, the majority of this fight. I think if he does somehow pull this out, it's through some type of submission out of nowhere. But I think that's unlikely. I think Miles Johns gets this done here. Dos Santos is durable, so I can see this going 3 rounds, but Miles Johns is my pick to get the W.
And to your point, this fight was previously scheduled for the middle of July. So that's where we're getting the memories there of analyzing this one. Let's move on to fight number 4, though. We have Manel Kape taking on Osbourne. How do you feel about this one?
I think this is a harder fight than the odds are saying. Like, this is a fight that I'm definitely likely won't put a bet on. I could see Manel Kape. He seems like the more durable guy. He seems like the guy that can push it into the second, the third round. He doesn't have cardio issues, so he's definitely there to fight. But he's fighting a guy that's going to be the bigger fighter. I think Odie is coming down in weight. I'm not sure if it's 2 weight classes, but at least 1 weight class. And he was already big in that other division. So he's going to be the bigger guy here who has a wrestling background, but I haven't really seen much of it. But it is there. He was a wrestler in university. He has good power. You saw that knockout against Rivera, but Rivera is really low level. So this is a tough fight because to me, Kape has fought the much better fighters. His last fight, even though he lost to Nicolau, I think that was a really close fight, a good showing on his part against a really tough fighter. And in this fight, he's going down. He's going down in terms of level of skill. This is tough. I'm not going to put a bet here, but I'm going to roll with Odie Osbourne. I just think that it's tough. I could see him coming out first round. I hope he gets to finish because if this goes into the second, third round, Manel Kape is very dangerous. I think he's dangerous all fight. I think we got 2 fighters that have never been knocked out or finished by strikes. So this is going to be a tough fight here. I think someone's going down. I'm not sure who's going to go down, but I'm going to go with Odie Osbourne to pull off the upset.
Odie Osbourne's last fight was at 145. Prior to that, he was fighting at 135. And yes, this fight is taking place at 125. So yes, coming down in 2 weight classes, and that could definitely make a difference. Odie Osbourne is somebody that uses that reach to his advantage as well. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage, 2 inches in height. And I mean, to some degree, these are 2 similar fighters or 2 fighters with some similarities, I should say, on the feet. If you just look at both of these fighters down the road, Manel Kape probably has the higher ceiling, but does that matter right now? Right. I think to your point, betting logic says you kind of have to go with the underdog if you are going to make a pick, or if you are going to make a bet, I should say. But if I'm making a pick, I am going to go with the fighter that I feel is maybe just a touch better technically at the moment with his striking, and that is Manel Kape. And to your point, as the fight continues, Kape probably presents a bigger threat, or I should say a continued threat, as opposed to Odi Osbourne. So from a pick perspective, again, I am going with Manel. Kape, slightly better technically in the striking, and I think that's what will make the difference. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if Odi Osbourne wins this as an underdog. So again, take for that what you may as a better. I'm going to stay away from this fight. I'm going to echo your message. I'm just going to enjoy this one because this should be a pretty entertaining fight. Let's move on to fight number 5. We have Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Jessica Penne. Taking a look at this fight, I'm going to start with Kowalkiewicz. She hasn't really fought for about a year and a half now. She lost to Zhao Nanyan. That was back in February 2020. 4-fight losing streak at this point. Her last win actually came back in 2018, and that was via split decision to Felice Herrig. I mean, she's still very relaxed and still pretty technically sound in the stand-up. You know, presents sort of that Muay Thai and kickboxing style of stand-up, very diverse striker, point fighter type of style, really likes that technical style of fight, and pretty solid movement. You know, she can clinch. She has that ability to land some takedowns. Although, again, you know, her takedown numbers aren't going to show for that at all. But she does have that ability in the clinch to at least threaten it. You know, has the BJJ knowledge defensively if she's put on her back, so she's not completely useless down there. But her biggest issue in modern day MMA, if you want to call it that, is that she's not really the best with handling pressure. You know, that was evident in her last fight versus Zhao Nanyan. That was evident in her Alexa Grasso fight as well. Doesn't really have the best striking defense, doesn't really move her head. She kind of keeps her chin up, just allows herself to get hit, doesn't really respond with anything. So, you know, for Karolina, it's hard to really find a clear, or I should say a confident path for victory for her because she just hasn't been able to get it done lately. If I'm looking at Jessica Penne, on the other hand, she fought pretty recently, back in April. She beat Lupita Godinez at that time. Quicker turnaround time than I thought. She is 38 years old. I know last time we were talking about her with the Lupita Godinez fight, I think she hadn't fought in about 4 years at that time. And 4 years ago, her stand-up wasn't really showing much. You know, long fighter, she uses her reach. She's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight, 2 inches in the height as well. But I will say her striking looked, I'm not going to say a lot different, but her striking did look different to me in her last fight versus Lupita Godinez. You know, it looked a little bit more fluid. It looked like she has better combinations. Looked like she has some quicker combinations, a pretty solid jab as well. Presents that sort of Muay Thai style of stand-up with a decent Thai clinch as well. And when it just comes to her clinch in general, I'm going to take it back again, 4+ years ago. If you look at her fight versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk, you know, she had Joanna controlled against the cage and threatened her, you know, threatened her takedown in that fight. Overall, Jessica Penne has that sort of tricky, I should say, grappling to her game. She's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She's pretty crafty on top. She definitely knows what she's doing down there. And, you know, ultimately, I think at this point, even though Penne is the older fighter, I think Karolina's 35, if I'm not mistaken. Penne, as I mentioned, is 38. I still think Penne has maybe a little bit more to fight for right now. She's a little hungrier, you know, especially coming back to the UFC back in April, winning a fight that was a somewhat close decision. And, you know, she expressed her hunger in the post-fight at that time. I think Karolina may technically be the better striker, but I think Penne is a little tougher, a little hungrier, and I think that grappling advantage that she has will ultimately make the difference in this fight. So I'm actually going with the underdog. I didn't even realize she was plus 105. Jessica Penne is going to be my pick.
Okay. Now this is a tough fight for me because these guys should have fought like 7 years ago, or 5-6 years ago. Penne got a lucky decision in my opinion, but that fight really could have went either way. But I thought Lupita Godinez did enough to win a 29-28 decision. But again, that fight can go either way. And if you have time, you can check MMA decisions. And a lot of those people agree with me. But regardless of that, Penne looked really good coming off of a big layoff, which makes this fight hard to predict because Karolina has been looking terrible. But when you look at who Karolina lost to, Zhao Nanyan, Alexa Grasso, Michelle Watterson, Jessica Andrade in 2018. So that's 2018 Jessica Andrade, right? So those are 4 fighters that likely would beat Jessica Penne as well, or they would be significant favorites in those fights. And then she beat Felice Herrig, Jody Escobel, but she's not good. But then she lost to Claudia Gadelha and Joanna Young-Jacek, and that's championship Joanna. And that's Claudia, number 2 contender Claudia back in 2017. So all I'm saying is that this is a hard fight to pick because Karolina has been looking bad, but she's been fighting the top of the division. Now she's finally fighting someone at the bottom of the division. I don't know which way to go, but I'm going to go with Karolina. The reason being, I think this is going to be mainly a striking match, and she's way more active, even to this day. In that fight versus Godinez, Penne landed 31 strikes that whole fight, and Karolina lands that in fight she loses, right? So I just think Karolina's activity I think she lands like 5 per strikes landed per minute versus like 2 or 3 for Penne. I think that's going to calculate down I think that's going to add up as the fight goes on, and I think that's what the judges are going to look for. This should definitely go decision, so I'm going to go Karolina by decision.
Yeah, I think that's a great analysis and definitely a great reason to be on the side of Karolina. I can definitely see that happening. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Let's see what happens in that one. We're going to move on to fight number 6. We have Alonzo Menefield taking on Ed Herman. For this one, I mean, Alonzo Menefield, he won his last fight back in March. Likes to come forward on the feet, a lot of level changes, some in and out movement, somewhat decent movement in general. I wouldn't say it's amazing from a footwork perspective, but he does move, keeps his hands up defensively, likes to throw that overhand hook, has that touch of death power, of course. He can diversify it as well with some kicks, strong clinch, good wrestling, has the strength, of course. Look at his physique. Has the physique. There's a lot to like on paper with Alonzo Menefield. Of course, the biggest concern is his cardio tank. We've seen that blown in the past. He becomes a completely different fighter, a very unreliable fighter once that cardio tank is gone. But he's going up against Ed Herman, the 40-year-old veteran, 27 wins, 14 losses. Ed Herman last fought in September, of course, 2020. He beat Mike Rodriguez in a fight he probably should have lost, caught a knee to the body there. Referee called it a low blow. Otherwise, it should have been a TKO for Mike Rodriguez. But he's actually on a 3-fight win streak now at this point. So he's riding some momentum at this point in his career at 40 years old. And if you look at who is Ed Herman at this point in his career, he, of course, is going to have that old school style of fighting. A bit of a brawler, has some pop in his hands, pretty slow on the feet, not really technically the most sound fighter, not really the quickest striker. But he's going to look to get in close, get dirty, make it a physical fight. Look for dirty boxing opportunities, look for clinching opportunities, make it uncomfortable, kind of rough it up, out tough you in some ways. And he can look for those wrestling opportunities as well, although I won't necessarily call it a threat of his. You do have to respect his numbers there, 2.21 takedowns per fight at 48% accuracy. Ultimately, although Ed Herman beat Mike Rodriguez, Rodriguez had him hurt on the feet. In the first round, it was a single elbow strike. In the second round, it was the knee to the stomach. And Alonzo Menefield has a lot more power than Mike Rodriguez has. And Rodriguez was dominating a lot of that fight until he ended up losing by Kimura, of all things, to Ed Herman. For Menefield, you do always have to ask yourself what he's going to do outside of being the early threat, or what is he going to do once the cardio tank goes out a little bit. But I don't really see this being that high pace and or heavy grappling type of fight that is going to wear him out pretty quickly. And also, I think the power is going to be too much. I think Alonzo Menefield could very much get a first round knockout here. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a finish. But even if he doesn't get a finish, I think Alonzo Menefield is still going to be my pick in this one. I don't think Ed Herman has enough.
Yeah. He's 40 years old now. Is it my turn?
Yep.
Oh, okay, yeah. He's 40 years old now. He's getting up there in age. And that win versus Mike Rodriguez, it's probably the most sketchiest win in UFC history. when Mike gave him that, it was a kick, right? And then he pretended that it was a groin shot. And then he was done. He was done right there. And then the fight should be over because they checked it. It was not a groin shot. He lied. And then they let the fight continue, gave him a break, let him recover, and then he got the submission. Like that's the most sketchiest win ever of all time because that was not a groin shot. But yeah, so what I see from Menifield though, I see improvements in his game. Like he got a Von Flue choke against Fabio Sharon. He got a nice takedown that fight. These are things that I haven't really seen from him do much of. And clearly he's improving his game. Clearly he's rounding out his game. He's not just a guy here just looking for knockouts. He wants to get the takedown now, get a submission, which is good. So again, like what you said, I think that as the fight goes on, there is that concern that Ed Herman can go 3 rounds, no problem. Alonzo has that reputation. He's a first round kind of or bust kind of guy. But I think he worked on that. I'm with you that I don't think this is going to be that high of a pace fight that his cardio will get broken in the second round. As long as he wins 2 rounds here, survives the third, he should get this win here. But what I really think is going to happen, I think he's going to connect first round. I think Menefield should get Herman out of there. Herman's 40. This might be his last fight. So Alonzo definitely is my pick here to get this done. But I think this is a risky pick as far as parlays go because this is a fight that, Menefield definitely should get this done. But cardio is for real. And if his cardio goes empty, he can't do anything, right? So I would be a bit careful only because Menefield is not known to have the best cardio. But Alonzo's my pick because I'm banking on this not even going 3 rounds, him getting him out of there.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with every single point mentioned on there. Let's move on to fight number 7. In that case, we have Vince Morales taking on Drako Rodriguez. How do you feel about this one?
I think this is one of the hardest picks of this card to me, because in my opinion, this just should be a stand-up fight. And Vince Morales to me has a really good jab, a really good MMA jab that can really dictate these fights. He has a good 1-2, and he's very he's very technical with his 1-2s, right? So Drako, I don't believe he is the better boxer than Morales. However, I think that Drako has more tools, more submissions. I believe Drako has the takedowns if he wants to here. But the concern is Draco's fight against Amin Zahabi. And in that fight, I don't know if it was jitters. And I think it was Bisping that noticed that as well as the fight was going. But if you watch that fight, he looked pretty nervous. Like he looked nervous. He looked like he had a lot of pressure. It was his first fight in the UFC. So that's for real. Like a lot of these fighters, their first fights are not nowhere near what they do in their second, third fight after they get comfortable in that UFC ring. It's real. First fight jitters, right? So I think that Drako is for real. I believe in that power. Again, this is the toughest fight for me on this card. I'm not putting a single coin on this fight, not a single play, nowhere on this fight. But I just think Drako is. I think that first fight, he learned from that fight. He was winning that fight until he got clobbered. So I like Drako in this spot. I think the power is the difference, and I think that Drako could land. So Drako's my pick here.
Yeah, I'll keep this pretty short on my end because, again, I think you covered every point that I would want to mention. You know, Drako Rodriguez is probably the more diverse fighter of the two. Morales has maybe the better hands, but I think Drako Rodriguez, the way that he uses his kicks, you know, it's going to make him a more diverse striker and more than likely will make him a more effective striker in this one. And I think to your point as well, this fight probably stays on the feet. So, you know, I can't be confident in either of these two fighters. I mean, the odds are close for a reason. I'm definitely going to echo what you mentioned and not put any type of coin on this one at all. But I am going to agree with the Drako Rodriguez pick because, again, I think he's the more diverse striker with the usage of his kicks. And I think this is a fight that is going to stay on the feet. So Drako Rodriguez will be my pick as well. And let's move on now to the final fight of the prelims, fight number 8. We have Bobby Green taking on Rafael Fiziev. With this one, I'll keep it short. Rafael Fiziev is my pick. I think it's a pretty bad matchup for Bobby Green. I think Fiziev is too good on the feet. I think Bobby Green's style won't work in his favor. He likes to keep the hands down, sort of relies on his speed or relies on him being the better stand-up artist of the two, or as opposed to his opponent, I should say. He keeps his hands down. Uh, you know, if he has to change his approach, then that's not Bobby Green. You know what I mean? So Fiziev, the stand up, too much, too good technically, too powerful. He's my pick. Rafael Fiziev. I think he gets the job done.
Yeah, I'm gonna be quick as well here. Fiziev is my pick here. Yeah, this is a really tough fight for Bobby Green. He's getting up there in age, and this is going to be similar to that fight versus Barboza. But I think Fiziev is going to be a bit more of a decisive win here. And that was like 6 years ago, right? So I don't see how Bobby Green gets this done unless he utilizes a lot of grappling, because he is the better wrestler here, or he should be. But you never know, right? Fiziev might be trading a lot of wrestling on his end, right? But I'm gonna go Fiziev. Yeah, if he keep this on his feet, and yeah, he's one of the best strikers in the whole game right now. So he should be able to hurt. You should be able to hurt him on the feet. So yeah, Fiziev is definitely my pick here. And yeah, I like this guy. I might put him on a parlay or two.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to consider him for some parlay action. Speaking of, let's take it to Vegas in that case. So let's talk about first, which underdog or two do we perhaps like, or do we think maybe just has a shot at winning in general?
All right, underdog wise, yeah, I'll take a shot with Odi Osbourne. Again, tough fight, but yeah, I'm gonna roll the dice on that as an underdog pick.
Okay, I'm not mad at that. Plus 175, pretty good value there. And like you said, I think a very important point. Again, he's dropping down 2 weight classes and somewhat similar style on the feet. So I can definitely see that happening. Somewhat of a 50-50 fight. Odi Osbourne plus 175, really good value there. If I were to look at an underdog pick, I'm looking in the direction of Jessica Penne. I think she just has I know it's only one fight, but I think she has a little bit of momentum to her. I think she has that hunger to make some noise, at least that belief in herself to make some noise. And Karolina, although she has lost to a higher level of competition, 4 or 3 years of not winning is going to do something to you mentally. So I don't know if she snaps out of it at this point. So Jessica Penne at plus 100 is going to be my underdog pick. And if you're looking at a favorite pick or two, who are you taking a look at?
All right, on this one, on the prelims, I like Rafael Fiziev to get that done.
Definitely.
Now Johnny Munoz, I'm gonna roll with Johnny Munoz. I'm kind of nervous because he's pretty new to the game in the UFC, but yeah, he should get that done. He's the bigger guy. Yeah, so I think he's gonna be the bigger guy fight night. So Johnny Munoz is my pick.
Okay, so we got 2 fights on the prelims for a little mini parlay there. Johnny Munoz as well as Rafael Fiziev. Minus 115, pretty solid payout there. $100 will get you 187. For the bigger bettors, $250 will return 469. If I'm looking at
hold on. I'm so sorry, man. Throw in there Miles Johns.
All right, let's get Miles Johns in there. Where is he at? Okay. So let's see what the updated payout is on that. So a 3-fight parlay plus 173. $100 will return 273. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will return 682. For my favorite pick or two, I definitely want Rafael Fiziev on there. And I know he has some reliability issues, but you really got to consider his opponent. I'm going with Alonzo Menefield. So I'm going to just probably stick with those two on the prelims, minus 124 as a 2-fight parlay. $100 will return 182. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will return 455. So let's sign off on that note. As usual, all of that algorithmic stuff that helps us out, we definitely appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. here at Boxing MMA Picks. Press the thumbs up on the video, press the notification bell so you know when our videos are dropping. And most importantly, participate in the comments. We want to hear from you. Which picks are you looking at for this card, for this prelim card specifically? If you want a deeper breakdown on a parlay of your choice, more than happy to do that. And let us perhaps know which underdog pick or two you feel has a shot winning on this prelim card as well. So we are going to sign off, like I said, on that note. This has been the UFC 265 Lewis versus Gane prelim prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. And as usual, let's get this money.
Let's do it.